Welcome back to the Quarterly Call. All content is for informational purposes and is not investment advice. Please consult with an investment professional.
Always good to be back. Today we're looking at a company that's been making waves
Okay.
in the financial world, Block Inc. Maybe you knew them as Square, their old name.
Yeah.
But either way, their recent performance and future plans are pretty interesting. I think you'll find it fascinating.
Okay, you've got my attention. What's so noteworthy about Block Inc. right now?
Well, they just had a really impressive Q3 2024 performance.
Okay.
And they've hit record profitability. And I don't just mean, revenue. They've reached the highest ever adjusted operating income and EBITDA,
Wow.
both in dollar terms and as a percentage of their revenue.
Hold on. I think we need to break that down a bit.
Yeah.
I mean, for our listeners who maybe aren't financial experts, what does that actually tell us about the company? Like, is that a good sign?
Yeah, it's a great sign.
Okay.
Think of it this way. Block Inc. is converting more of their revenue into actual profit, which means they're running a tight ship, they're becoming more efficient. Really great sign for long-term sustainability.
So they're not just growing, they're growing smart.
Exactly.
Okay, I like that. So Block Inc.
Hmm.
has these two main ecosystems, right?
Yeah.
Square and Cash App. Are both of them contributing to this success?
Yeah, definitely. Both ecosystems are doing really well. We're seeing strong gross profit growth across the board, 19% jump year over year.
Wow.
Square's holding its own with a respectable 16% growth,
Okay.
but Cash App is really taking the lead, 21% growth.
21%, that's huge. What do you think is driving that kind of growth?
Well, they've been really strategic about rolling out new features and new products,
Yeah.
especially ones that really deepen engagement,
Right.
and encourage users to kind of manage more of their financial lives
Right.
within the Cash App ecosystem. So things like Cash App Card, Cash App Borrow, and their Buy Now, Pay Later platform.
Okay, so it's not just about getting people to download the app. It's about getting them to actually use it. Okay. And you mentioned Cash App Borrow. I remember hearing about their plans to expand that to new customers.
They did, yeah.
Didn't they?
Yeah, that was originally slated for Q4 of this year, but looks like those plans have been shifted to 2025. And there's also a bit of a delay on a one-time transaction cost benefit they were expecting from a Square partner. That's also been pushed to next year.
So a bit of a timing shuffle, but not necessarily something to be concerned about.
Right. It seems like they're just timing adjustments, not signs of any real problems.
Right.
It's worth noting that Block Inc. also revised its outlook for the full year 2024. They've actually raised their guidance on adjusted operating income and EBITDA. They're maintaining their previous projections for gross profit, though.
So they're basically saying we're still on track, even with these minor shifts.
Basically. Yeah.
Okay. Speaking of being on track, let's talk 2025. They've mentioned this goal of achieving Rule of 40 by 2026.
Yeah.
Can you explain what that means for those of us who aren't, finance wizards?
Rule of 40 is a metric that combines a company's gross profit growth rate with its operating profit margin. So it's basically a way to see if a company is balancing growth and profitability the right way. To achieve Rule of 40, those two percentages need to add up to 40 or more. Block Inc.'s aiming for at least mid-teens gross profit growth with a mid-20% adjusted operating income margin.
So they're not just trying to grow as fast as possible, they're trying to make sure it's profitable growth too.
Exactly.
Got it. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, how do they plan to actually hit these goals? What's making them so optimistic about 2025?
Well, there are a few things. Their projected gross profit growth is at least 15% for 2025.
Okay.
And this is based on a combination of strategic initiatives and new products they're rolling out across Square and Cash App. Things like their new orders platform, some pre-authorization features for sellers, and an enhanced POS system for restaurants.
So it seems like they're focused on making things easier and more efficient for businesses.
Exactly. Streamlining operations and providing tools to help businesses thrive.
Got it. Now, what about those 24 million Cash App cards out there? I heard they're getting a big upgrade.
Yeah, they are. Get ready for the launch of Afterpay on the Cash App card.
Okay.
This is going to be huge. It's basically going to transform those cards into a compelling alternative to credit cards.
Interesting.
Imagine disrupting the credit card market by offering users a more integrated and flexible way to manage their finances.
So a savvy move, especially with how popular Buy Now, Pay Later is getting.
Yeah, exactly. They're really capitalizing on that trend. And to push their growth even further, they're ramping up their investment in go-to-market strategies for Cash App. They're doing performance marketing, brand awareness campaigns, and they're even offering incentives to encourage more paycheck deposits in 2025. So they're really trying to get new users and make Cash App like the central hub for people's finances.
So the idea is to build that ecosystem, like a one-stop shop for everything.
Exactly. They're creating a network effect where the more users they have and the more engaged those users are, the more valuable the platform becomes for everyone.
Makes sense. It seems to be working, too. They've had an impressive year, and their plans for 2025 are even more ambitious.
Definitely. Block Inc. is firing on all cylinders right now. Their focus on managing expenses while strategically investing in growth areas has set them up for success.
It all sounds very promising. But I bet some listeners are wondering about the potential downsides. What are the risks here?
That's a good question. You always have to consider risks. One of the biggest challenges for any financial company is the changing regulations.
Right, of course.
Block Inc. works in a lot of different places,
Yeah.
each with its own set of rules, so they need to stay on top of things and make sure they're compliant, which can be costly.
So it's a bit of a catch-up game with the regulators.
Yeah, you could say that.
Yeah.
They really need to be ahead of the curve to avoid problems.
Makes sense. And what about competition? The fintech space is pretty crowded these days, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's a very competitive space, both with established players and new startups. Block Inc. has to keep innovating and find ways to stand out.
So what are their advantages? What sets them apart in this market?
Well, their focus on building this seamless, integrated ecosystem is a big one.
Okay.
They're not just a payment processor. They're offering a whole suite of financial services and commerce tools that all work together.
Right.
That's a level of convenience and interconnectedness that's tough to beat.
It's kind of like the Apple strategy, but for finance.
Yeah, you could say that. They're building a loyal user base by offering all these products and services that work together smoothly.
And don't forget about their brand recognition. They've built a strong reputation, especially in the U.S.
Absolutely. That brand recognition is a big asset, especially when expanding into new markets and products.
Right.
And their commitment to innovation, particularly in things like Bitcoin and AI, is important too. They're not afraid to try new things and push the boundaries, technologies that could change the whole industry.
So they're balancing sticking to their strengths with venturing into uncharted territory.
Exactly.
And let's not forget their focus on user experience.
Right. Absolutely.
They've consistently made those complicated financial processes more intuitive, more accessible.
Yeah.
And I think that's been key to building trust and loyalty. It's not just about the technology for them.
Definitely.
It's about the people using it.
It's about people, yeah. Making those often intimidating financial things easier to understand and manage.
Exactly. Now, I want to talk about something that might be on some listeners' minds. Risk.
Yeah.
Specifically, the risk that comes with lending. As Block Inc. does more lending, isn't there a gamble there?
Well, there's always a risk with lending.
Right.
But Block Inc. seems to be approaching it very strategically.
Yeah.
They've been very clear about having a strong risk management system
Okay.
and making sure they have diverse funding sources to support sustainable growth in their lending. So they're not just throwing money at borrowers. They're careful and calculated about who they lend to and how they manage those loans.
So it's a data-driven approach to lending.
Absolutely. They're using data to make smarter decisions and minimize risk.
Got it. We've covered a lot of ground here. There's strong Q3 performance, their big goals for 2025.
Yeah.
We've only scratched the surface, though.
There's a lot more to dig into, especially with their financials. We need to look closer at their revenue streams, their profit margins, their cash flow, to really understand their health and potential.
And we can't forget about the bigger picture. What about the economy, and how will things like that affect their performance going forward?
Those are all really important questions, and we're going to tackle those in our next segment.
This is going to be an interesting look at a company that's pushing the boundaries in the world of finance. Stick with us as we delve deeper into Block Inc.
We'll be right back. So before the break, we were talking about some of the potential issues facing Block Inc., things like competition and regulations. But I want to switch gears a bit and talk about what they're doing really well, which is focusing on deepening relationships with their existing customers.
Right. They've been emphasizing that bank the base strategy.
Exactly.
Instead of just going after new users all the time. It's like building a loyal fan base, right?
Yeah, it's a great analogy. Instead of expanding outward all the time, they're making sure their current users are happy and engaged.
Right.
And we can see that in their efforts to increase things like paycheck deposit activations and promoting products like Cash App Card and Cash App Borrow.
So they're trying to become like the go-to platform for people's financial lives,
Yeah.
making themselves indispensable.
Right, and strategic partnerships are a big part of that strategy.
Yeah, how so?
Well, for example, their collaborations with companies like T-Mobile and Salon-Centric here in the US, they're partnering with established players in different industries to reach new customers and offer unique value propositions.
So they're showing they're not just for one specific type of customer anymore.
Exactly. They're broadening their appeal and showing that their services can be used in different industries. Their partnership with the Restaurants Association of Ireland is a great example. They're offering specific solutions for the challenges that restaurants face.
So it's not a one-size-fits-all approach.
Exactly.
Now, let's talk about something that's been in the news. Block, Inc., focus on Bitcoin. They've always been interested in crypto, but it seems like they're really doubling down now.
Yeah, they're definitely not just experimenting anymore. Their vision of Bitcoin being the main currency of the internet is pretty bold. And the things they're doing with mining, accessibility, and usability show they're serious about it.
They're really investing in making Bitcoin easier to use for everyday transactions.
Right, like their Cash App exchange.
Yeah.
It's become a popular way for people to get into crypto.
Makes sense. So it sounds like they believe in the future of Bitcoin,
They do.
and they want to be a leader in that space. Now, another part of their growth strategy is expanding globally.
Yeah,
They've been making progress in markets outside the U.S.
they have.
How are they adapting to different cultures and regulations?
Well, they're not just copying what they do in the US, they're tailoring their approach to each market
Okay.
and forming partnerships to help them grow faster. Like their collaboration with JMS, which is the merchant services arm of JCB in Japan.
Oh, right. So that gives them access to a big card network there.
Exactly. It's a smart move, especially in a place like Japan where the payments landscape is changing so quickly.
Right.
And they've even introduced a QR code product there,
Okay.
which allows sellers to accept payments from all sorts of digital wallets.
So they're really paying attention to what each market needs.
They are. It's important for building trust.
Right. Now, even with all this positive stuff, there are still challenges. We mentioned regulations and competition, but let's dig a little deeper. What are some things that could slow Block Inc. down from reaching their goals?
Well, the financial industry is always changing, so staying ahead of the game is tough. Regulations can change quickly, and keeping up with them in different countries can be expensive and complicated.
Yeah, it's a lot to manage.
And then there's competition. The fintech world is full of new companies all the time.
Right. So how can Block Inc. stay competitive?
Well, a few things give them an edge. Their integrated ecosystem is one. They offer a whole suite of financial services.
Okay.
So it's not just about payments anymore. That kind of convenience and connection is hard to beat.
So it's like a one-stop shop, keeps people coming back.
Exactly. And their brand is strong, especially in the US, which gives them a good starting point.
Right. And they're not afraid to innovate. They're trying new things with Bitcoin, AI, all kinds of stuff.
Exactly. That willingness to experiment is really important in an industry that moves so fast.
And we can't forget about their customer-focused approach. They've made finance easier to understand and use.
Yeah, it's about making those financial processes accessible to everyone. And that's been key to their success so far.
Now, another thing we should talk about is the risk involved in lending. As Block Inc. grows its lending business, managing that risk becomes even more important. How are they dealing with that?
Well, they've been clear about having a strong risk management system in place.
Okay.
They're using their experience from Square Loans to make smart decisions about who to lend to.
So it's not just random, they have a strategy.
Exactly. And they're using data analysis to help them assess credit risk more accurately. Plus, they have multiple funding sources, so they're not relying on just one thing.
So they're spreading the risk.
Exactly. They're being careful and transparent about their lending practices, which helps build trust.
That's important in finance, transparency. We've talked about a lot, but we haven't even looked at their specific numbers. We need to dig into their revenue, profit margins, and cash flow to really understand their financial health.
Yeah, that's the next step. We need to analyze those key metrics and see how they're making money and growing.
That's where it gets interesting. We'll be back after a short break to break down the numbers and see how Block Inc. is performing financially. Stay tuned. All right, let's dive into the numbers. We've talked about record profits, but what are the actual figures?
Well, for Q3 2024, Block, Inc. brought in a total net revenue of $5.98 billion. That's up 6% compared to last year.
Okay, not bad. But what if we take out Bitcoin revenue?
Yeah.
That can be pretty unpredictable.
Good point. Excluding Bitcoin, the revenue is $3.55 billion, an 11% increase year over year.
So their core business is doing well, even without the crypto stuff.
Exactly.
Okay. Now, we mentioned their disciplined expense management before.
Yeah.
Can you tell us more about the strategies they're using?
Well, they've been really strategic about controlling costs, especially when it comes to personnel, structural expenses, and corporate overhead.
Okay. And their people cap strategy has always intrigued me. Limiting hiring when you're trying to grow seems a bit strange.
It is interesting, isn't it? By limiting hiring, they have to be more creative and efficient with their existing employees. It's all about focusing on the most important roles and making sure everyone is contributing.
So it's not just about cutting costs.
That's right.
It's about using resources wisely.
Yeah, and it seems like it's working. Their adjusted operating income margins have really improved.
No,
A 15 percentage point jump year over year
wow.
for the first 3 quarters. That's pretty impressive, especially considering they've also managed to achieve significant gross profit growth. They're up $1.1 billion year to date compared to last year.
Okay, let's break down that gross profit a bit. Cash App had a 21% year-over-year growth in Q3, reaching $1.31 billion.
Yeah.
What's driving that?
It's mainly due to two things: an increase in inflows per active user and a higher monetization rate. They're doing a really good job of encouraging people to use those features within Cash App that generate revenue,
Okay.
like Cash App Card, Cash App Borrow, and their Buy Now, Pay Later platform. So they're creating this ecosystem where users naturally gravitate toward those services.
So it's all about making it easy and valuable for people to manage their finances within the app.
Right.
Now, what about Square? Their gross profit was up 16% year-over-year, hitting $932 million for the quarter.
Yeah, their banking products and their software and integrated payments are performing really well.
Okay.
Banking products saw 22% year-over-year growth, while software and integrated payments were up 14%. This shows that their plan to go beyond just processing payments and offer more financial services to businesses is working.
So they're becoming that one-stop shop for businesses.
Exactly.
I'm also curious about their international performance. It seems like they're doing well outside the U.S.
They are. Square's international gross profit was $129 million in Q3, a 30% increase year-over-year.
30%. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's mainly driven by improvements in product attach rates, especially for their banking products. People outside the U.S. are really using their financial services.
It shows they can adapt to those different markets and build partnerships that resonate with international audiences, like their collaborations with JMS in Japan and the Restaurants Association of Ireland.
Exactly.
Okay, now let's look at their balance sheet. How's their overall financial health?
They're in a very strong position. They ended Q3 with $10.7 billion in available liquidity.
Wow.
Almost $10 billion of that is in cash, cash equivalents, restricted cash, and investments in marketable debt securities.
Okay.
They've also got $775 million available through their revolving credit facility and another $518 million under their warehouse funding facilities for the Buy Now, Pay Later platform.
It sounds like they have a lot of resources to support their growth plans, whether that's through expanding their business, making acquisitions, or other strategies.
Yeah, and they're committed to returning value to their shareholders.
Okay.
They've been buying back their own stock, which shows confidence in their future.
So all these numbers tell us Block, Inc. is in a good place financially, they're making smart decisions, and they're focused on long-term growth. It's been great exploring all this with you.
Yeah, it's been a really interesting conversation.
Thanks to everyone for tuning in to the Quarterly Call. For more episodes, please remember to rate and follow our show. Until next time, stay curious and stay informed.